Okay, and this is the cold.
The Alzheimer's Disease Center, and she's going to tell us a little about memory today. And
Fora TV, the world is thinking.
We're here today with Emma Schulman, who is a social worker and gerontologist here at NYU, affiliated with the Alzheimer's Disease Center. And she's going to tell us a little about memory today and what happens as we age to our memories. So Emma, my first question for you is, what exactly is memory?
Well, memory is a person, actually. It's everything you ever learned, everything you ever store in your long-term memory, and everything you ever recall. It's you, actually.
And considering how important memory is to who we are, what happens to our memory as we age?
Well, this is called age-associated memory loss. And what happens is that there are distinct losses, but they do not interfere with a proper and a good daily life. And the losses are, to go to them quickly, there's a shrinkage and a loss of neurons. There's also a shrinkage or a loss of neurotransmitters which send messages from cell to cell. And there's a slow up of the metabolism in the brain. And that's it. It does have results, however. And those can be overcome very easily, because what happens as a result of that is that it takes much longer to cull information from your long-term memory to your present memory, so that you have to be very patient. The one thing I'll caution everybody about is don't be anxious, because anxiety makes it much more difficult and it takes much longer. And the other things that happen are that you have to do one thing at a time. When you're younger, you can do 3 or 4, but now it's one, just one thing. And it takes longer to learn. But let me say this, and this is important. It was thought up until several years ago that once you reach the stalwart age of 65, you no longer could grow new nerve cells. This is not true. You can grow new nerve cells as long as you are alive, but you have to work at it. There's no magic pill.
And so you talked a little about the changes that we can expect as we age and how those changes translate into our everyday lives.
Right.
But how does memory work? How do we actually make memories?
Okay. What actually happens is that if you're motivated and if you focus and do several other things, which I will tell you in a minute, you have a short-term memory and a long-term memory. Things do not stay very long in your short-term memory. It's about 30 seconds, that's about it. And if you, for example, if you go to the telephone book and you're looking for a phone number for your doctor, you have to call him, whatever it is, and then you come back and somebody rings the bell and you talk to them, you will not know what that number is, and it will not go into your long-term memory. We're living in a very, very, very exciting time when there's so many new advances and you can't possibly remember everything. It really isn't necessary. So what you want to do is you want to remember the things that are important to you, that will make your life more, full and pleasanter, and you also want to do 3 things. You want to focus, you want to repeat whatever you're trying to learn. For example, if you want to learn the name of a book, so what you will do is you will focus on that name, you won't let anything else come into your head or anybody, and you will then repeat it a number of times. Repeat is wonderful. It's a very good friend of memory. And then what you will try to do is visualize it as much as you can. So if the book has a man and a woman on the cover, you can make a little story in your head and visualize in your head a man and a woman and what it means. What you also need to do is encode that with something you already know. Now you know what a man looks like and you know what a woman looks like. So that's not a very difficult encoding job. Then it goes into long-term memory. And what happens is it stays there forever and a day. You don't lose it, except if there's some kind of a bad situation going on in your brain. But normally you don't lose it. So you have it forever.
And are there, you mentioned a little bit about visualizing, and you mentioned repetition. Are there other ways that we can maintain and increase our memory?
Well, you know, this is a very controversial subject, because there are scientists who say very specifically that there's no question that the brain is like a muscle, and if you don't use it, you lose it. However, there are other scientists who say that we haven't had enough experimentation, we really don't know. But there is one particular point they all agree on, and that's exercise. That has been really, really proven in many scientific exams that they've done for over the years in all parts of the United States. And what exercise does is it gives the brain it gives the brain oxygen, which the blood in the brain needs. And it also, they have found, helps to create new neurons. Now, the other things are and are not controversial. There was a PBS excellent program on the brain, and the neurologist said, without any reasonable doubt, your brain is hungry for new information. And if you don't feed it, you're not going to be able to maintain the kind of information, memory, etc., that you want. So there are ways of feeding new information in the brain. And one of them, of course, is to learn a new language. That seems to be the number one that all of the people who are in this field really feel is very important and can stimulate your memory. It doesn't mean that you have to take exams, that you have to really sweat it. All you have to do is just take a conversational French, Italian, Spanish, whatever pleases you, and sit in the classroom and absorb as much as you can and do a little work. Because nothing comes without a little work. So that's a very important factor. Or learn how to dance, or learn anything you haven't done before. There's a theory that you should be using your left hand more to pick up things, to do things if you're right-handed, or vice versa. That if you go into the supermarket, which is on 25th Street, that you don't walk on 25th Street. You walk on 24th, you walk on 23rd, you're getting new stimuli. You may not realize it, but you are. There are new buildings, there are different people, etc. So these are two very easy things to do. And it doesn't take very much to do them. There are little things that are a little more difficult, which really help with memory. For example, if you read a paragraph which you're not familiar with, and you turn it over, and then you say to yourself, what's in that paragraph? What is that person trying to tell me? What are the main features of that paragraph? Then you turn it over, look at it again. If you do it about 5 or 6 times, you're going to find something lovely. You're going to remember the main points and most of that paragraph. And it's good stimulus for your memory. Also, if you write down numbers, like take 3 on the first line, take 4 on the second line, take 5 and go up to 9 different numbers. And if you start out with looking at the 3 and then turning it over and saying, oh, this is 368, and then go to the 4 and keep doing this until you get to 9. 9 is an average number. 3 is not a good number. If you have 3, I think you may have a little problem, if that's all you can remember. So that's another way of doing it. If you go to the grocery, most people make out a list. It's perfectly normal to do that. But try this. Go to the grocery, stick the list in your pocket, don't look at it. See, after you've finished your purchases, before you go to have them wrapped and pay for them, if everything on that list has been purchased. If not, looks like you'll have to do a little more work. But you can keep doing this until you will find that you do remember every single thing on that list. The 2 things most people complain the most about is not losing keys or glasses, number 1, and number 2, they can't remember names. one of the fallacies of trying to remember names is that you don't have to remember everybody's name. Some of them mean nothing in your life. Why bother? Now, there are some groups of names that are easy. Like if the name is green, you already know that color. You don't have to start with something new. If it's a name you don't know, there are three things you have to do. You have to keep mentioning that person's name when you're introduced over and over and over. Secondly, you have to decide that you're going to keep repeating it. Remember what I said about repetition, that it's a good friend? Well, it is. And thirdly, you have to encode it with something you already know. If you don't do that, you will not remember the name. For example, if I say my name is Rose, very simple. Everybody knows what a rose is. So you're encoding it with a flower name that you already know. There are lots of names like that. For instance, Campbell, you can encode with a can of soup, etc. So there are all of these different ways of doing it. I suggest to people, if they really want to do this properly, that when they go into the grocery store and their stuff is being packaged, they ask the person her name and see if they can find their own way of encoding it. And if you go into, I asked my mailman what his name was. I ask everybody. I think it's a fun game to see how much you remember and whether you can find something in your long-term memory that you already know that you can really counterbalance so that you can remember that name forever and a day. As far as finding your keys, that's so simple. You buy something that goes on the wall, a magnet, with a thing that, you know, curls up so you can hang things, and you put your keys on that, and when you leave the house, remove them. When you go back, put them down there. At first you may forget to do that, but if you do that consistently, you're not going to have a problem with finding your keys. And the other thing a lot of people talk about is they go into the kitchen and they say, gee, what do I go in here for? Well, it's very simple. If you're going from your bedroom into the kitchen, keep repeating. Remember what I said about repetition? Keep repeating what you're going for. I'm going for a glass of juice. And you're going to be a genius when you get to the kitchen because you're going to remember that you're there for that glass of juice. So there are all those nice little hints. And you don't have to do them all in 1 week because most people won't. So just pick one that appeals to you and do it, and then do the next one the week after, and do the third one the week after that. Or you could just do something very simple. Pick a telephone number of somebody who you don't call frequently, and keep repeating it to yourself until you remember it. And there's one more thing I'm going to say, and that is, if you have any reasonable doubt, write things down. If you're going to call, if you're going to meet somebody for lunch, and you're a little concerned that you won't remember their name, there's absolutely nothing wrong with writing their name down, the time of the lunch, when you're going to meet them, and get yourself accustomed to looking at that so you won't forget it. So I think that covers most of the major things that could help you with memory.
Thank you very much, Emma, and I'm sure we've all learned a lot about memory today.
Thank you.